Breaking tonight, still without a deal on U.S. tariffs, Mark Carney is hitting back, taking aim at some auto companies for moving jobs and production south of the border.
If we don't push back hard against him and against these companies, we're going to lose it all.
What we're learning about Ottawa's latest move and the reaction to it. Plus, a massive gambling probe engulfs the NBA with the arrest of players and a coach.
This is an illegal gambling operation and sports rigging operation that spanned the course of years.
From the mafia to X-ray card reading tables, the allegations the FBI call mind-boggling. And the anticipation builds as a team, a city, and country get ready for the big show.
We want to go out there and do everything we can to make this country proud of us.
It is the eve of World Series baseball in Toronto.
From CBC News, this is The National with Chief Correspondent Adrienne Arsenault.
Thanks for joining us. We begin with breaking news and a serious new escalation in the trade war with the United States. Donald Trump has suddenly announced that all trade negotiations with Canada have been, quote, terminated. His decision coming out late tonight in a post on Truth Social. This is not the first time Trump has said he is ending trade talks with Canada, but it does come on the same day that Canada delivered a tariff blow of its own, targeting some U.S. automakers. So let's go right to Ashley Burke in Ottawa now. Ashley, can you take us through precisely what Trump is saying tonight?
Adrienne, Donald Trump declaring on social media that he's officially called off trade talks with Canada. It's over an advertisement from Ontario's government that's been playing on American networks. Ontario's premier recently launched the $75 million anti-tariff campaign using a video with the voice of former President Ronald Reagan. It's from his famous address in 1987. And in the video, Reagan is heard saying high tariffs lead to retaliation by foreign countries and trigger fierce trade wars. Trump wrote on Truth Social that the Ronald Reagan Foundation said it's fraudulently used. The foundation posted online that the ad misrepresents the president's radio address, and Ontario didn't have permission to use it. Trump also went on to write how important he says tariffs are to his country's economy and said, quote, based on their egregious behavior, all trade negotiations with Canada are hereby terminated. Now, this all unfolded not even 2 hours after the federal government here in Canada announced it was taking action against 2 car manufacturers for scaling back production in this country. In one case, to move production to the U.S., which the White House had celebrated as a win. The federal government is hitting back at 2 big automakers. Ottawa calling it unacceptable that Stellantis and General Motors are both scaling back manufacturing in Canada, breaching its commitments. Stellantis announcing it's moving some production to the U.S. As CBC News first reported, Ottawa is now trying to put pressure on them to back down by limiting the number of vehicles they can bring in from the U.S. tariff-free.
It's a carrot-stick approach, and this actually, I think, will work.
The union warns Donald Trump wants nothing less than to surgically destroy Canada's auto sector.
If we don't push back hard against him and against these companies, we're going to lose it all.
The government had exempted both Stellantis and GM from a 25% retaliatory tariff Canada imposed in response to Trump's levies. But it came with conditions. The automakers had to keep their Canadian production and live up to their promises to invest in the country.
I think Canadians and the industry want the governments to be tough on companies that don't own up to those partnerships that in many cases have been worth billions. And this is a great move.
But effective immediately, the government is reducing the amount of vehicles GM can import tariff-free from the U.S. by 24% and cutting how much Stellantis can bring in without levies by 50%.
Well, the price of vehicles are going to go up the more you have tariffs.
Canada's Car Dealer Association warns this move will cost consumers.
When your trading partner shoots you in the foot, it's not a good idea to pull out another gun and shoot yourself in the other foot.
We're working hard for what else can be done with the plant.
The Prime Minister says the government is talking to Stellantis and GM to try and keep jobs in Canada, with Ontario's Premier warning the companies if they cut local jobs, Canadians won't forget.
They need to think long and hard, or they're going to lose the support of the Canadian people.
So, Ashley, this comes after the Prime Minister, it seems, appeared to change his tone with Trump.
Yeah, Adrienne, at that press conference, Carney warned Trump that if there isn't progress on trade talks to get sectors hit by his tariff some relief, that Canada will do what's necessary to protect its workers. And Carney suggested that could include the U.S. not having unfair access to Canada's market. But the Prime Minister said he's not there yet. We'll see if this new development changes his mind.
All right, that's Ashley Burke in Ottawa tonight. So let's bring in Katie Simpson in Washington. Katie, a huge blow to the momentum around trade talks, but it is true that Canada has seen this before.
Yeah, Canada has navigated this nightmare before and got through it, was able to sort of get things back on track, but it did deliver a massive blow to momentum that seemed to be building in the summer. And now Canada is finding itself once again in this very difficult spot. What I've been told previously by senior Canadian government sources is whatever we're hearing publicly, it's likely way worse behind the scenes. That is what has been this sort of pattern in the past when it comes to these kinds of big threats and these big blow-ups. The last time Donald Trump was this angry at Canada, it had to do with when Canada was about to impose its digital services tax. Canadians will remember he put a note out on Truth Social, seemingly without much heads up or warning, that he was again going to halt those trade talks because he was angry about that policy. What we saw at the time, Canada eventually decided to late night issue a statement on social media just before the actual tax was supposed to kick in, announced that Canada was not going to impose that tax. And it took some time for Canadian officials to sort of gear things up and get things moving again after some momentum had been building. Remember, the last few weeks, Canada had been trying to inch closer to the finish line to try and get some tariff relief. Mark Carney was just here in Washington in October. He and Canadian officials had said they've sort of instructed teams to get to sort of a landing zone to lower some tariffs. But now everything appears to be off.
Well, I mean, and so here comes the impossible question, right? What now? Where does this leave the negotiations?
Well, Mark Carney is going to need to possibly get some FaceTime with Donald Trump at these major international summits that are coming up in the days ahead. There was no formal bilat plan between Canada and Donald Trump on the sidelines of these major summits, but they are expected to meet in passing. Canada is going to have to do something to appease U.S. President Donald Trump to try and see if he'll change his mind going forward and to see if perhaps he will consider reopening these trade talks. If he doesn't, Canada and the U.S. is headed toward a really difficult renegotiation of CUSMA.
Yeah, winter's coming. All right, Katie Simpson in Washington tonight. Thanks, Katie. And also late tonight, we have reaction from Ontario Premier Doug Ford's office tonight on Donald Trump's allegations. And the statement is that President Ronald Reagan knew and spoke directly to Americans that tariffs hurt the U.S. economy, workers, and families. The statement goes on to say he was a strong supporter of free and fair trade between Canada and America, and that the commercial uses an unedited excerpt from one of President Reagan's public addresses, which is available through public domain. Of course, we will keep following the story as it develops. Well, Canadian baseball fans have been waiting for this moment for 32 years. This, of course, is the eve of Game 1 of the World Series between the Toronto Blue Jays and the Los Angeles Dodgers. That moment when all things seem possible. For the Jays players, their nerves, of course, as the weight of this sinks in. But as Jamie Strachan tells us, they're also feeling the support of an entire country behind them.
A final coat of paint, putting the final touches in place as Toronto welcomes the World Series north of the border.
Here's a pitch on the way, a swing and a belt, left field.
For the first time since 1993.
The Blue Jays are World Series champions.
It's just really cool for the organization, and I'm just thankful and humbled that I'm the one doing it.
Here comes the 3-2. He got him!
The team's magical, unexpected run to the World Series has fans delirious, snapping up Jays merch.
I picked up, the World Series hat. I had to get this because, after the World Series, we're not going to know the next time the Jays are going to make it.
I'm anxious, but in the best way. It's all excitement. I'm so proud, and I'm just excited to see what's going to happen.
A date with the storied Los Angeles Dodgers and their superstar Shohei Ohtani has the Jays under the bright lights of the global media.
I'm sure everyone's going to be a little nervous. You're supposed to be nervous.
But embracing what could be a once-in-a-career opportunity.
The pressure will kind of go away when you're in the moment. But, it's great to have a whole country kind of behind you, and it's not just a city.
You don't know how many times you'll make it to the World Series in your life. Some people never do. So a lot of people never do. So I think just being super grateful for the opportunity and taking advantage of it by preparing the best you can and going out there and competing.
That countrywide support on display. A visit from the Prime Minister, who likes the Jays in 6th. But no bet yet with U.S. President Donald Trump.
I think he's afraid to make a bet. He doesn't like to lose. He hasn't returned my call yet on the bet, so I'm ready.
The city of Toronto is setting up a massive watch party at City Hall.
We want people, families, residents. If you're in Toronto and you want to be part of the celebration, come on down, enjoy it, watch the game with us, and cheer on our Jays.
And Adrienne, over my shoulder right now, you can see the Dodgers taking batting practice ahead of the World Series Game 1. A huge media presence. Wherever the Dodgers go, a large media throng always follows.
Well, you're in the right place at the right time. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jamie, but when you talk to people about where they were the last time Jays were in this position, some of them get a little emotional.
I think for our fan base that's been waiting over 30 years for the team to get back to the World Series, this is a special time. For those who remember it, it's a chance to revisit those memories. For a new generation of Blue Jay fans, a chance to experience what being in the World Series is all about.
Absolutely. All right, thank you. That is Jamie Strachan reporting from clearly inside the Rogers Centre in Toronto. As Jamie mentioned, the Jays are up against a fierce opponent and one of the best players in baseball, Shohei Ohtani. So Thomas Day takes a look at how these teams really stack up.
For a team whose departure from LA was covered by news choppers, it's been a smooth ride to the World Series. The Dodgers, with a near-perfect record in the playoffs, now in Toronto, drawing biblical comparisons.
Some of the pundits south of the border have called this a David versus Goliath fight. How do you see it?
That is a beatable baseball team that has its flaws and that has its really, really good strengths.
The Dodgers will lean on Shohei Ohtani, baseball's single biggest star, and with good reason.
Got 7 strikeouts.
A unique slugger who can pitch. Last week he threw 10 strikeouts.
Ohtani, did he?
And in the same game smashed 3 homers, knocking out LA's last opponents.
Question for Canada, Shohei. What's your biggest challenge facing the Blue Jays?
Blue Jays are the team with the most momentum, and they're also very talented.
But Ohtani may face jeers from fans still bitter over his rejection of Toronto's courtship. 2 years ago, he even visited the Jays' training facilities in Florida and apparently gladly accepted gifts.
I hope he brought his hat, the Blue Jay hat that he took from us in our meeting. I hope he brought it back, finally.
Consider the Dodgers are looking for their 3rd World Series title since 2020 and hoping to cement their legacy as a dynasty. Look way up there, the banners in the rafters show the Jays haven't been here since 1993.
Are the Dodgers favored? Yes. Do the Blue Jays have no chance? No.
Jays fans eager to see infielder Bo Bichette return from the injured list. That's him in gray. And how about rookie sensation Trey Yesavage, Game 1's starting pitcher, despite debuting in the big leagues just last month.
We want to go out there and do everything we can to make this country proud of us.
As for that David versus Goliath comparison, the previous round's Canadian-born MVP Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is embracing the label.
You know who won. You know, everybody know who won, right? So that's what I got.
Yes, in that 3,000-year-old tale, the underdog wins. The Jays, no doubt, have a tough battle ahead. Thomas Dagg, CBC News, Toronto.
And we'll have special coverage all day tomorrow, beginning on CBC News Network at 1 p.m. Eastern, hosted by Andrew Nichols. And then I'll be here with a special edition of The National from outside the Rogers Centre with all that comes with a moment this big in a game this big. Well, the FBI has announced the arrest of more than 30 people, from professional basketball players to accused mobsters. Cameron McIntosh has the stunning accusations of faked injuries, fraudulent bets, and rigged poker games fronted by NBA stars.
Bets placed during a pair of 2024 Toronto Raptors games are part of two sweeping gambling schemes stunning the NBA. Current coach of the Portland Trailblazers, five-time NBA All-Star, and former Raptor Chauncey Billups, Miami Heat guard Terry Rozier, and Damon Jones, a retired player, all facing charges.
This is an illegal gambling operation and sports rigging operation that spanned the course of years.
In one scheme, Rozier is accused of faking an injury, allowing bettors to profit on his underperformance. Similar bets were made in other games, including two Toronto Raptors games. Former player Jonte Porter admitted to faking an injury. Jones is accused of passing bettors inside information, including about an injury to then-teammate LeBron James. Jones and Billups are also charged in a scheme the FBI says saw NBA stars attract high-stakes gamblers to rigged poker games they cheated in, run by the mafia.
The games in the New York area were backed by the Bonanno, Gambino, and Genovese crime families of La Cosa Nostra.
Joe Varden is an NBA writer.
Anytime that you hear the head of the FBI mention the NBA and the American mafia in the same sentence, you know it's going to be a pretty bad day for the league.
If fans believe that outcomes are being manipulated, even if it's an isolated case, it undermines the legitimacy of the product.
FBI say they've charged more than 30 people in 15 states, that the mafia poker scam involved high-tech gear, including rigged card shufflers and an X-ray table that reads cards.
There is a way to make money, and it requires ingenuity, cleverness, and intelligence. You should not underestimate the ability of the five families.
None of this has been proven in court. In a statement, the NBA said Rozier and Billups are on leave. The league facing a major scandal just as the new season tips off. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The union representing Canada Post's 55,000 workers has lost its constitutional challenge to Ottawa's back-to-work legislation. Last December, the federal government ordered the striking employees to return to work for the busy holiday season. The union argued that violated their right to strike. Canada's Industrial Relations Board has now dismissed that complaint, calling the right to strike, quote, essential but not absolute. Well, the Alberta government says it is moving to end the province-wide teachers' strike.
They've got 72 hours to come in and find a different way to get the kids back in class.
What this means for students and how teachers are responding. Exposing the potential risk of using private rehab facilities.
What did Lisa care about?
Getting people to come to Nomna. Money.
Why critics warn clients need to beware. And a moment to recognize an NHL great.
I don't think there was a dry eye in the entire arena.
We're back in 2. That smoke billowing into the skies is near Canada's largest airport as Toronto firefighters work to extinguish hot spots from an overnight fire inside a waste transfer station. The facility was closed when the fire broke out. There were no injuries, and investigators have not yet been able to pinpoint the cause. Well, thousands of striking teachers and supporters descended on the Alberta legislature, calling for more support for education. But as Julia Wong shows us, the government seems determined to move on with its agenda and legislate teachers back to the classroom.
Striking Alberta teachers, hoping to grab the attention of the provincial government. Thousands pack the legislature grounds as pressure from the teacher strike keeps rising. 750,000 students are out of the classroom. 51,000 teachers are off the job.
It's hard not being with students and teaching. You know, that's what we want to be doing as teachers.
To be honest, I've been stressing a little bit.
Teachers have voted down 2 contract offers in 5 months. The last offer included a 12% raise over 4 years. a commitment to hire 3,000 new teachers and 1,500 new educational assistants by 2028.
The union says classroom sizes, teacher-student ratios, and better pay are sticking points. Now, the province has signaled it's done with negotiating.
Legislating us back to work doesn't change the issues. It does not solve the problems.
But with those sounds of protest muffled inside the legislature, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith unveiled an entirely different bill, which will allow it to reject international agreements that deal with areas under provincial jurisdiction. Why is Bill 1, the contents of Bill 1, the desire to protect provincial jurisdiction, why is that your focus right now?
Well, we have a legislative agenda that wasn't foreseeing that we would be in the middle of a teacher strike.
The Back to Work bill will be fast-tracked through the legislature on Monday.
They've got 72 hours to come in and find a different way to get the kids back in class.
The union says it hasn't decided how it will respond.
My colleagues across this province feel immensely disrespected by this government. Legislating terms back for return to work instead of negotiating.
Students left in limbo.
I really love school, so I missed it a lot.
And hoping life soon gets back to normal. Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
A private BC rehab center promising quality care is being accused of putting lives at risk.
The clients there called it a crack house.
The Fifth Estate investigates the potential flaws of for-profit treatment. After the break, Rosie's here with that issue. Hey, Rosie.
Hey, Adrienne. Tonight, we are, of course, going to talk about Mark Carney's speech ahead of the federal budget.
We won't transform our economy easily or in a few months. It will take some sacrifices, and it will take some time.
So what could those sacrifices mean for Canadians? Chantal, Althea, and Andrew join me to talk about that and a whole lot more.
Air Canada is expanding its operations out of Toronto's Billy Bishop Airport. New flights to New York, Chicago, Boston, and Washington, D.C. are all set to launch next year. Curiously, the move comes as demand for U.S. travel dips, a trend driven by trade tensions. Air Canada is also adding more flights to Montreal and Ottawa. Well, rehab facilities are often touted as the way out of addiction, but a Fifth Estate investigation has found a patchwork of unregulated for-profit treatment centers operating with little or no oversight. As Stephen D'Souza explains, critics say that puts vulnerable clients at risk.
Massages, sauna, hot tub, in the woods, it's a cabin, Michelin star chef, that's what
Emily Bogan says the promise was enticing. Treatment for her drug use and Lyme disease from a team of professionals in an idyllic setting. The reality, though?
The clients there called it a crack house.
She and her mother had found Nomina Wellness on Vancouver Island. They say based on online photos, they expected a luxury mountain retreat. Instead, she ended up here. She says Nomina co-owner Lisa Calco promised professional treatment, but Bogan says some sessions were run by untrained staff, and she wasn't treated for Lyme disease. She paid more than $33,000 for 3 weeks, but others told the Fifth Estate they paid $60,000 and more. What did Lisa care about?
Getting people to come to Nomina. Money.
It's appalling. It's shocking.
Some experts say her experience is part of a bigger problem with private residential treatment centers across much of Canada. There are no standards of care, little government oversight, and critics warn it's putting lives at risk.
When you take your vulnerable 19-year-old or 20-year-old to a private residential treatment center, there is no oversight body. There are no standards.
Just Alberta and Quebec regulate private residential treatment centers. BC only regulates those that register with the province. Nomina does not appear on any registries in BC. The Fifth Estate has learned that a 27-year-old man died at Nomina from a fentanyl overdose in October 2024. We found inconsistencies in the staff's response, including questions about whether naloxone, the potentially life-saving opioid overdose reversal drug, was available at the time. The BC Coroner's Office is now reviewing information the Fifth Estate provided.
He was just such a young, beautiful person. I mean, he just had so much potential.
We contacted Lisa Calco at Nomina, but she declined an interview. She did email us to say, though, that their website does provide information about their offerings, including their facilities, and she did say that they're very open and transparent with clients about their programs.
Stephen, you mentioned the lack of regulation. Is there any move to change that?
It doesn't appear that there is for many of the provinces, especially in Ontario, where the message seems to be the staff at these facilities are governed by their professional colleges, like doctors, nurses, and social workers. The problem with that thinking, though, is that there's no provincial requirement in much of Canada for those professionals to be employed in those centres.
Okay, I see. All right, Stephen D'Souza, thank you.
You're welcome.
You can watch Dying to Recover right now on YouTube or tomorrow night on the Fifth Estate on CBC Television and GEM at 9 p.m. Now, let's break down the news shaping our world tonight. Rosie's here with At Issue.
At Issue tonight, Mark Carney previews the upcoming budget.
We will build a stronger economy where everyone has a chance to get ahead. And we will empower Canadians with new opportunities, better careers, and a lower cost of living.
But tempers expectations.
We won't transform our economy easily or in a few months. It will take some sacrifices.
With the Conservatives pushing back.
This was the sacrifice speech to Canadian youth. Mr. Carney, our youth have sacrificed enough.
So what's been made of Mark Carney's speech ahead of the budget? What are those sacrifices that he's talking about? What could they mean for Canadians? I'm Rosemary Barton, here to break it all down tonight. Chantal Hébert, Andrew Coyne, Althea Raj. Andrew, I'm going to start with you tonight. What did you make of what the Prime Minister was laying out there and preparing Canadians for?
Well, it was pretty vague, lots of hints and allusions. Much of it we've heard before about, we can't have the same relationship we have with the United States. We've got to diversify our trade. We've got to build things faster than before. Somewhat contradictory in that his habit is, and you've heard some of that, is to raise expectations and talk about all the daring do and the amazing things we're going to do. But as you say, mixed in with hints again of sacrifice, which I can only assume means there'll be some spending cuts in the budget. We're still going to see, I think I see enormous deficits, and so it's going to be an interesting game for them to explain both the size of the deficits and the size of the cuts and the size of the spending increases. It's going to be a communications challenge for them.
What did you make of it, Althea?
Well, I think that Andrew basically laid out what they were trying to do with the speech, which is explain how you can possibly see a budget with, say, $90 billion or $100 billion deficit, and yet also feel that there's going to be cuts, and that those cuts may be affecting you, or that the expenses that you were hoping, the spending that you were hoping to see, is not in the budget, at least not in the short term. So there's a lot of dampening of expectations. Beyond that, it wasn't clear to me what he was trying to communicate. If this was a kind of pre-election speech, because they haven't actually reached out, early on with opposition leaders trying to say, okay, well, what do you want to see in the budget, and who can I work with, and whose ideas can I incorporate to make sure that the budget sails through? How this is really the electoral budget, aside from, I have a plan, which he told us he had in the spring, right? He was the man with the plan. I have a plan. This is my plan. It's going to take a long time to execute, so stick with me. Beyond that, I'm not sure. I think they're going to have to rethink what their communication message is in the weeks, I guess, when he comes back from APEC to come.
Chantal?
I'm with my colleagues. I don't really understand what the point of that speech was. You do not bill an important speech from the Prime Minister and then end up with kind of a rehash of the election campaign and whatever happened since. And if Mark Carney thought that he was speaking to Canadians, they would have tuned him out because they've heard all this and it doesn't amount. So if the lead is in 10 years, we will have doubled our exports to non-US markets. Really, okay, maybe you want to do that. I think we've heard that before, but not only that, the easiest day in that plan was yesterday when you said you wanted to do it. And the execution is something else. You're going to have to make sacrifices Okay, so what are we talking about exactly? To me, it sounded like a bit of a useless comms exercise.
It was interesting. I mean, if he's laying the groundwork for a budget that is going to be a lot, whether it be the deficit cuts and trying to understand, what they're doing with the economy. It was interesting to me, Andrew, that he also said to people, this is going to take time. I don't know how much time a prime minister has to make those kinds of changes that he's talking about if Canadians are still feeling the pinch when it comes to inflation, particularly the cost of food.
It depends on how he executes. I think the public is more ready for, I'll use the A word, austerity, than maybe people give them credit for. There's a cycle to these things, and people, I think, were and are pretty spooked by what's going on in the world around them. But that will depend upon how the government manages it. If you look like you're in control of events rather than events controlling you, I think people will follow where you lead. That was certainly the case with the Mark and Chrétien cuts in the mid to late 90s. They looked like they had a plan and they knew what they were doing and they were confident about it. And people are much more prepared to follow where you lead if you look like that. If you look like you're always playing catch up, like you're always one step behind events, and any government right now would be somewhat forgiven for that because the events are so strange when you're dealing with, basically a deliberate self-inflicted recession in the United States that has reverberations for everywhere around the world, and they attempt to basically cripple our car industry. These are things that nobody could really plan for. So I don't think the public is as complacent as perhaps sometimes people suggest, or as unwilling to see changes, including cuts to spending. But it will depend, as I say, on the way in which the government executes the plan.
Sure, Chantal.
But my point wasn't whether the public is, and I agree with Andrew on his assessment, it was on whether you bill a major prime ministerial speech that turned out to be a non-event. And that's where we started from. Today, we learned that the government is going to tariff, in some ways, Stellantis and GM for leaving workers adrift in Ontario to move to the US or to not do what they had committed to do. Well, that would have been news. But the speech did not say that. It actually didn't say very much. The only line I stayed stuck on, because I'm watching for that, is that we will know what the climate policy will be in the budget, and it will be different from the current policy because it says results and not objectives and not prohibition. So I'm figuring that more of the Trudeau climate policy is going to get dumped on November 4th.
Yeah, the deal that they came to today was only done today. So I guess yes, it would have been good to have it last night, but they only finished it today.
No, but it's not a deal that they came to today. It's an announcement of things they're going to do.
That's right. Yeah. Althea, you weigh in there, because there were some other breadcrumbs, like that important one that Chantal points out, the language of which you can interpret as Chantal is doing. But it's basically now you have to wait 2 weeks to see what I'm talking about.
Nothing he said about that climate plan, though, was new, aside from the fact that it's going to be in the budget. And the other things that he said were going to be in the budget, you kind of scratch your head and wonder, like, why do you want to make this a confidence vote? Like the immigration levels. Why are they putting the immigration plan in the budget and possibly making that a confidence measure? And then also the language about the cuts. Like, there's going to be stuff possibly that is affecting programs that some people value. But he referred to it as wasteful spending. So there's a lot of, I think, head scratching going on about like what exactly they're trying to do with this budget and why they're packaging all this together. And to Chantal's point, I agree with her. You know, when the Prime Minister's office says the Prime Minister is going to have a live address, you think a monumental event is happening. Like last time Justin Trudeau had a live event, it was because we're declaring a trade war with our southern neighbor, the United States. Like that is like we're breaking through network programming. The Prime Minister is telling the country a very serious message. if we, who frankly are paid to like watch this all day long, cannot figure out what the Prime Minister's message really was yesterday, there is no reason the Prime Minister's office needed to call this a live address. If he'd called it a speech to university students, maybe we wouldn't have covered it, and maybe that's why they were trying to get our attention. This is not a monumental event that deserves all
but
the,
it wasn't,
the thinking
it,
that
just
we're
to,
kind of trying to parse what he's saying, what he's not saying.
Sure.
If he has a message, let him say it.
Just to be clear, though, it wasn't an address to the nation, because that's something that you have to negotiate with broadcasters. It appears all so.
Yes, but they called it on the itinerary live address.
Totally.
And
Why they called it
got
that, I don't know.
And even the Prime Minister's office was trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Totally.
It's not that important, minimizing it.
Last quick word to you, Andrew.
And, well, now that we've raked him over the coals, can I put in a good word for vagueness and opaqueness? Which is, supposedly the budget is supposed to be secret. Its contents are supposed to be divulged on budget day. In recent years, it's become farcical in recent years, where you or I could be prosecuted if we reveal the results, but governments, reveal virtually the entire contents of the budget before the budget.
Yes.
So if this is another one of Carney's sort of old schoolisms, that we're not actually going to have the budget revealed to us before budget day, there might be something to be said for that.
Well, I'm skeptical on that one.
Join the club, because that is not what I hear.
Yes.
There will be more strip teasing over the next few weeks.
Okay, all right, we're going to leave that there. Thank you all for that. When we come back, we'll take a look at Pierre Poilievre trying to walk back his comments about the RCMP.
Went too far in saying the former Prime Minister should be in jail.
That's not what I said.
What's been made of the blowback that the Conservative leader is still facing? Is this an issue for his caucus? That's next. At issue, Pierre Poilievre and the RCMP after his comments last week calling the leadership despicable and suggesting there should have been charges against the former Prime Minister. The opposition leader tried to clarify his comments.
He went too far in saying the former Prime Minister should be in jail.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said.
Heard. What did you say then? Repeat what you said.
Sure, I'll tell you what I said. I was asked about the scandals of the last 10 years of the Liberal government, and what would I do if such scandals and corruption were to happen when I become Prime Minister? And I said I would have zero tolerance for corruption. Nobody is above the law.
So where does this leave the Conservative leader? Let's bring everyone back. Chantal, Andrew, and Althea. Chantal, I'll start with you. We talked about this last week on the third block because it seemed like it was maybe a one-day story. We're a week later, and he's still struggling with it. What do you make of it?
That it will remain a major error in judgment, and the fact that he now is trying to put a lot of smoke around what he said, which is something he hasn't done very often in the past, shows that it landed very badly, not just with the public in general, but with the Conservative caucus and with many Conservatives. Let me give you an example of how bad a week that was. There was one day on National News Watch, the online, where 5 stories were about Pierre Poilievre, and all of them were negative. I don't think he's ever been the target of such a storm from all corners since he became leader.
Yeah, a storm of that he created, Althea. Like he didn't have to go down that road, and he didn't have to choose that kind of language.
He chose to do that interview. He chose to answer that question the way he did. He is trying, it's true, he did not say Justin Trudeau should be jailed, period. No. But he did say if the RCMP had been doing its job and not covering up for him, then he would have been criminally charged. And he said many of the scandals of the Trudeau era should have involved jail time. And then he went on to say that, frankly, the leadership of the RCMP is just despicable. So that unleashed a flurry of commentary, including from Dimitri Soudis, Stephen Harper's former director of communications, and a bunch of other Conservatives came out of the woodwork, and a lot of MPs who actually support Pierre Poilievre and would probably put themselves, on the right side of the Conservative Party, were really just annoyed, because this is the leader who told them at the very beginning of the fall sitting that they should focus on the things that unite them. Talk about crime, talk about jobs, talk about the economy, talk about affordability. What is he doing? Talking about something that is not any of those things. So this is like the first time really that there are people within caucus who are like, maybe there is something to this whole, like, he's not ready to be prime minister yet. There are, of course, we talked also about the rumors of the potential floor crossers. There's a lot of unhappy people who feel like now they're just flailing around. Mr. Poilievre is struggling with his own messaging. He was trying to say that it's not all the entire leadership of the RCMP. He really just meant Brenda Lucki. That was like earlier in the week. Now he's saying he never said those words when actually everybody can see that he actually did say those words. And it's interesting to, I don't know, what will tomorrow's line be?
Yeah, and they were trying to start the week with this letter to the Prime Minister about what they wanted to see in the budget, and it got some pickup, but very little, Andrew. So it really stepped on all of the messaging that they were trying to, as Althea points out, like put out there because they think it's important and they agree with the message there.
Yeah, and MPs will be familiar with the kind of thumping they take when they go off message. So when the leader goes off message, it's a particularly probably a moment of payback, perhaps. To reiterate Chantal's point, the playbook for Pierre Poilievre and Jenny Byrne is never, ever apologize for anything. So anytime you're even explaining, it clearly must have ruffled a lot of feathers within the Conservative caucus. I think it was not just the comments here. And again, the problem is not the suggestion that the Prime Minister might have broken the law, because he may well have. The problem is, as a political leader, to make such a statement without any supporting evidence, you just look like a wild man. But I think it also crystallized or became a moment for people who were bothered by his general messaging strategy long before this, this was their kind of break point where they could really press home their advantage, because he'd so clearly overstepped. The problem the Conservatives have is, while there may be a lot of people within the party, particularly within the parliamentary caucus, who might not be terribly keen on this kind of messaging, there's a large section of their base that's really keen on this, who not only want to see Justin Trudeau in jail, but want to see their leader saying improper things, making people like us upset, violating norms, shaking up things, fighting, quote unquote. And that's really who he's playing to. And ultimately, the question before the party and for the leader is, and this is the age-old question for the Conservatives, are you going to get to power just by energizing your own base and ginning out the people who are already supporting you, or do you need to start reaching out to people who aren't with you yet? And part of the reason they're not with you is they've got a lot of doubts about your leader.
Last word to you, Chantal.
Pierre Poilievre's message since he became leader has been, if you're not with me, you're the enemy. But there's not enough, there are more enemies than there are people in the base that Andrew describes. So at some point, that base is not only more into red meat, if you want to call it that, than the average Canadian, it turns off the average Canadian. And that's a major issue. And increasingly what Conservatives are seeing is it's not the party brand that's the issue, it's the leader. And if that continues into January, it could lead to some interesting results in the bad sense of the word for Pierre Poilievre or party unity.
Yeah.
The Conservatives, the party, are 2 points behind the Liberals in the polls. The leader is 20 points behind Mark Carney.
Last quick word to you, Althea.
I agree with everything Chantal has said. I think it's really interesting to see the kind of reflections that are happening at the moment within the Conservative Party, and the commentary also. Like, is the Conservative Party that was trying to get those 60-plus men that basically voted for Mark Carney last time, was trying to get them back in the fold, this kind of messaging does not appeal to them. And so the question is, like, what does this Conservative Party stand for? Is this the party that supports institutions, or is this the party that wants to break everything down? And all the concerns about the Trumpism of Pierre Poilievre in the last spring election are now back at the forefront. So it's a really bad week for them.
Okay. Thank you all. Appreciate you weighing in on both of those things. That is at issue on The National. We're going to keep this conversation going and talk about some of Canada's changing relationship with India. You can catch that on YouTube or, of course, the At Issue podcast. Now back to Adrienne in Toronto.
Hey, thanks, Rosie. Coming up, Brad Marchand's emotional return to Boston.
No matter what, Boston's always going to love Marchand.
The tribute that brought him, the Canadian, to tears. Next in our moment. This is a freeze frame of the moment Brad Marchand was overcome with emotion. A player from Halifax on the roster in Florida feeling some love in Boston after the Bruins played a tribute video to their former captain's 16 seasons with the team. So the video marked Marchand's first game back in Boston since being traded. Fans were just as touched as he was, and tonight, his tearful homecoming of sorts is our moment.
A beloved player here in Boston.
The atmosphere was one of the craziest games that I have ever been to. Everybody was just so excited to see Brad. It was definitely a strange feeling watching him come in through the visitors tunnel, but I was also just really happy to be able to see my favorite player on our ice again. The minute he showed up on that Jumbotron and you could see him crying, I don't think there was a dry eye in the entire arena. Everybody felt his passion for our city. Like most of Boston was, I was extremely sad when we found out that he got traded. I had to go and see him as soon as I could, and it was definitely emotional for me. No matter what, Boston's always gonna love Marchand. Florida's really lucky to have him.
Oh, is Florida ever lucky? I mean, this is a tough one for Canadian hockey fans, right? He's been a bit of a menace to Toronto Maple Leafs and the Edmonton Oilers, but when he won the Stanley Cup with Florida, he did the honor of taking that cup back to Halifax and then taking it through a Tim's drive-through, so maybe it all evens out. From all of us at The National, thank you for being with us. I'm Adrienne Arsenault. Take care.